morning, everybody. Just before I start, I'll just say one thing, and this is because when I gave a similar presentation to the conference in Riyadh, I think I got about 30 seconds into the presentation, somebody put their hand up and said, why is IBM talking about CFOs? How does IBM engage with CFOs? Just really want to say, IBM doesn't simply sell hardware, software and licenses. I know that's the business we might be recognised in. We're actually the world's largest consultancy company. More than around about half our revenue globally comes from services. So we are definitely in the space of talking to CFOs and CEOs. Now today what I want to do is take you through the results from our global CFO study. This study, we've coined a new term, the value integrator, and it talks about the CFO role and how we see the CFO role evolving. And I think, having listened to the speakers this morning, there's a lot of similarities coming through from our global study to the challenges that people this morning are saying that we need to face. So the study builds on, approximately every 2 years, IBM undertakes a global study where we talk to CFOs. This study builds on the two previous studies, the 2005 study and the 2008 study, where the 2005 study looked at the agile CFO, focusing on the power of business insight and decision support to the CFO's business partnering role. And then the 2008 study, balancing risk and performance with integrated finance organisation, demonstrated that finance organisations who successfully implemented process and data standards were more effective. But this time we wanted to look a bit deeper. And in terms of this study, we interviewed more than 1,900 CFOs from around the world. Now, we've got to remember, it's been mentioned today, the study, when we undertook this study, it was a time of, real economic uncertainty. We had the economic crisis. There was still, the systematic changes that have been driven through in terms of globalization, the increases in technology, the increase in environmental awareness, and then you combine all of that with the seismic shocks that went through the financial system, and you realise that the world order has changed dramatically. And whilst we might be seeing people saying that we're starting to come out of recession now, that we're starting to see some signs of recovery, I think it's still fragile. We still understand that there's going to be volatility, there's going to be uncertainty for the future, and risks are going to be a huge part of the new economic landscape. We're in an environment where wealth and consumer confidence have evaporated. Continued unemployment is going to be high, particularly in the major mature markets, and personal and corporate tax is likely to have to rise to pay for the financial stimulus packages that governments have brought in. So all of that's going to see subdued consumer demand. And the volatility is going to remain high. We see now the shocks that came through the system with the debt crisis in Greece, and what companies need to be in a position to do is they need to be in a position where they can respond immediately or almost immediately to unexpected material events, either positive material events or negative material events. Now, just to give you a little bit of background on our study, we started off really to answer three basic questions. What finance model achieves the optimal mix of capabilities needed to help the enterprise outperform? And what can CFOs do to enable timely and informed decision making? And how can CFOs help the enterprise anticipate and shape the environment? Now, if you look at this study there on the chart, you can see we've got representation from across all geographies, all sizes of enterprise, all different sectors. And if you look at the title slide as well, we were talking to senior guys in the organisation. And we did, as I say, more than 1,900 of these interviews. More than 1,500 of them were face-to-face interviews where we went to see the CFOs and sat down. So it's not just about people ticking boxes and sending questionnaires back. It was in-depth interviews where we took people through a series of questions and followed those questions through. Now, what came through was, as I said, we've been doing these over a number of years. You know, the CFOs, it's not surprising given the environment that I mentioned when we were conducting this survey that the pressure to reduce the cost base was there as number one in terms of all CFOs we saw. Second was the need for faster decision making. One of the interesting sidelines to this was that the ability to attract and retain talent, which had normally been in the top 1 or 2 over our previous surveys, had dropped down to 5. Now, given the reduction in costs that people were after because of the financial crisis, that's hardly surprising because you're not trying to retain people, you're trying to reduce costs. But the one thing that was different was when we talked to the CFOs about their own agenda for their finance organisations, retaining and attracting talent, more than 80% of CFOs were really concerned with that. So that, as part of the growing demand for CFOs in terms of what CFOs do, whilst for the organisation they might be happy to say that attracting and retaining talent is not as important, for their own finance functions to develop and be able to serve the organisation, they saw it as increasingly important. One of the things, though, as a result of these factors, 60% of the finance organisations that we talked to said they'd had to make major changes to respond to the events that had happened. So, the status quo really isn't proving to be anything that we're going to be able to